Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brainwash to be Broke, the show where we talk about all the brainwashing stories, patterns, beliefs that we've been basically taught since we were born and what is truly possible. Today, we are here with another amazing guest. His name is Jesse. I'm super pumped to have you here, brother. He is a founder of Mindpeaks Co. He is a mental performance coach and psychology-based leadership trainer, recognized as the #1 mental skills coach in Pennsylvania with 8 years of experience. Pretty cool.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
So yeah, you're pretty much long, like it getting closer to a decade. So I'm pumped to have you here. When most of the people when they starting a podcast and asking, I'm going straight up into like, what is your backstory? Like, let's dive into your those type of like, what do you do and so on, like more of the business side of things. Sure, we can go to that round too, but I would love to start this conversation a little bit differently. And my first question then would be, what is your true driving source when it comes to business and all the success that you have? Like, is it something like, are you religious? Are you in like, some freedom junkie, like looking for and pursuing that? Or is there something like truly that inspire you to go and do things that
Yeah.
it is like something that is completely like over the energy just flowing through you when you think about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, ultimately it comes down to probably if I were to pick two words, it's autonomy and impact. The autonomy is just the freedom over my time, location,
Yeah.
who I'm with, like just being able to not have to answer to anyone. That's always been something that I've grown up like admiring in other people. And, my dad, I grew up in a family business. While he didn't necessarily answer anyone, he worked, 100-hour weeks. But I just always knew I wanted to have my own business and be able to impact people in the way that I felt I was meant to. I always kind of grew up seeing the world in a different way than a lot of people around me. Contrarian by nature, very inquisitive, very curious. You could even argue argumentative and stubborn at times. But yeah, I just, I always couldn't see myself working for someone long term and like just having to answer to anyone really.
Yeah.
So that, and then just impact again, just seeing the world in a unique way and just having that lifelong curiosity for human behavior and like what drives us, how to make people perform better, how can I impact the people around me and uplift everyone around me. That's always been a curiosity of mine. I'm lucky to have gotten the psychology bug like early on like in high school, like early on in middle school, high
Yeah.
school, and that kind of snowballed into my, my degrees that I pursued and all my involvement with a Division I athletic program and then starting my businesses coming out of college was always grounded in psychology and behavior and interpersonal relationships and connection, emotional intelligence. And so, from the level of impact, I just know that I want to be able to touch as many people as I can and give them new ideas, like help them reframe the way that they look at certain things and constructs and patterns in their lives so that they can kind of redirect and start pursuing their actual potential. So that's what it's all about for me: impact, autonomy, and a lot of that revolves around my family. Just being able to
Ooh.
give back
Right.
and honor my parents, my grandparents in the best way possible,
Yep.
and give them things that we've never had before. And
Right.
sometimes I can go too far down the path of thinking, coincidentally enough, thinking about money and what that means, and thinking that I can solve their problems by buying my dad his dream car or this or that. But at the end of the day, I've learned, we'll get into it later, but I've learned that that's not necessarily what matters. And there's other ways to honor them. And I think the best way to do that is to benefit and help and give value to the world in the best way that I can and honor them rather than having to provide for them because that was their job for me. They've done it. Now I got to, move on and just honor them the best I can. So, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, this is cool. It's really interesting. Okay, so your basically your background is like your parents being already like in entrepreneurship at some point, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
in a sense, yeah. You know, again,
Okay.
family businesses are a different beast. So, you know, I'm sure you have a lot of people on the show that are maybe solopreneurs,
Yeah.
you know, entrepreneurs at heart. But when it comes to family business, you know, my grandfather started that business. So my dad grew into it and, you know, started running the business, but he's really it's different. It's kind of different. It's hard to explain, but when it comes to family businesses, you just become so entrenched in everything, and it just becomes a part of the family dynamic as well. And there's a lot of challenges that come with that. I've talked about them in the past. I have some YouTube videos talking about it, so I'm not going to go too far into that. But when it comes to family business, yeah, like there's a lot to overcome there, and yeah.
I'm actually interested in that. Like, what what is the difference having a family business and then like normal business that you like basically the only owner, like basically, or you are basically bootstrapping it? What is the difference like when it comes to the mindset? Because I believe like I don't know like how well skilled, for example, like your parents or your grandparents been when they take the business, like, because I believe also that starting an online business or doing an online business and
Sure.
doing a physical business is very different type of skills that, or maybe not even very different type of skills. The skills basically build a business is the same, but you don't have to be as skilled as if you would be competing with people online, where you are basically competing with the best player out there. And if you have like local business, for example, and so on, you're basically competing in just in the area of
Of
the
course,
local
of course.
local area, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, first I'll give you a little background on like just what our business is, just
Totally.
so if it helps you. But then I have a few questions for you first.
Okay.
Basically, we're a small family-owned business. It's really just been ran. It's been my father's hobby, really their entire lives. And luckily, it's been enough to, you know, put some food on the table, pay the mortgage,
Yeah.
and that's really about it. Like I like to say, I grew up stuck in the middle. You know, I was grateful to like just know where my next meal was coming from, to like have a loving family and all those things. But I wasn't so blessed as my friends around me to where like I felt like I could just get anything I wanted. So I never really had I had just enough to feel comfortable, and I'll say first and foremost, especially when it comes to like a broke mindset or whatever it is, like a money mindset, being stuck in the middle is actually one of the most dangerous places to be
Yes.
because you're just
Yes.
comfortable enough to not change your circumstance,
Yeah.
but not uncomfortable enough to where you feel like you need a, you know, yeah, to have to change, and you're not also blessed enough to where you see the results, you know what it's like to be wealthy, and you double down and like go go go, and so
Yeah.
or not have to worry. So it's interesting, but our family business, we manufacture and resell small parts, component parts to the military, aerospace companies, you
Ooh,
know, a lot
okay.
of the different switches and dials and light
Yep.
indicators and cable assemblies that you'll see in a tank or a Boeing, you know, jet
Okay.
plane, or like we manufacture those small parts. But a big part of the business is surplus, which means holding on to things. And there's a reason why I want to mention that up front, especially when it comes to money and energy and what it means to hoard things. We're in a surplus business, which means we have, I shit you not, we have over 300,000 SKUs of items.
Okay.
And each of those SKUs can all be combined to make a string of 3 million plus different combinations of parts and things like that. So, you know, the
Interesting.
government
Okay.
might call and say, hey, we need this part, but it doesn't exist anymore. Well, we know we have part A, Y, and V, and if we put that together, then it actually makes up what they're looking for. So there's a lot of
Yep.
like, it's the way we run the business, and I'm a degree removed from it now, but the way the business is ran is we have 100% of the stuff that we have. We know 20% of it might sell at any given time, but we don't know which 20%. And so for the
Hmm.
past 65 years that our family's business has been alive, we've held on to everything.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of nuance with that of like, how do you sell like that just doesn't sound like a profitable business. Like you're supposed to have
Hmm.
a streamlined, you know, number of SKUs and be
Yeah.
more efficient. But no, we hold on to everything, and that spills over into, you know, our home environment, all the shit that we held on to physically, like, oh, this could be used for this, or this could be used for this, and it's still part of me today. And when it
Yeah.
comes to money too, it's like, well, no, well, I can't let this amount of money go into that or that. Like, I need to hold on to it
Mhm.
all, because this can be used for that at some point. And if I don't use it at this, then I can save it and use it for this and this and this and this. And then you get into that kind of scarcity mindset of like, if I get rid of it, I might not get it back. And
Uh-huh.
so, there's commonalities there. I just wanted to draw that thread. But to go back to your question of how is a family business different than like just any other business? And if you were to
Hmm.
go into get a job or if you go and start your own business, well, let me ask you, Adam, if I were to say, describe the different dimensions of a family, what does it mean? What does a family in like consist of? What would come to mind for you?
Relationships.
Relationships, okay. Think of the
Some certain
dynamic of the family unit and how families uh, interact.
trust.
Okay, trust.
Like based on trust.
Okay,
Okay. What else?
I'll start to feed you some. So,
Okay, good. Yeah.
especially, if you were to think of, so I'll throw out a few keywords: nepotism, people that
Okay.
come into a business. The kid comes into the business, and the dad is the owner of the business, and now the kid just skips, 10 levels up, and there's nepotism.
Okay. Okay.
So that's something that a lot of people see in family businesses. Nepotism,
Okay.
another um, part of the family unit or dimension is dysfunction. A lot of families are dysfunctional
Ooh,
with the
yeah. Yeah.
relationships, with
Okay.
those types of relationships. There's
That's
dysfunction.
deep, bro.
The
Okay.
brothers
Yeah.
fight with brothers. The mom and dad might
Yeah.
be on different pages. So families mean dysfunction, and
Mm-hmm.
so the difference in a family business compared to another business is now you're bringing in the dynamics, good and bad,
Mm-hmm.
into a business. And businesses need clear hierarchies. You need to earn,
Mm-hmm.
your way to the next rank and prove that you should be the next VP or whatever the case is.
Yep. Yep.
We are a small business, so for us, it hasn't been like that drastic. And my brothers and I, we all basically grew up in the business as well, like as
Mm-hmm.
kids running around
Mm-hmm.
the office and stuff. And so in a lot of ways, we've been learning all along, with everyone else in the
Get it.
business. But think about, if you watch the show Succession on HBO, it's basically about like what is it? Um, well, it's which news guy? Is it the Murdoch family or I forget? But anyway,
Don't worry. Yeah.
these kids come in and they're all fighting for who's going to be the next CEO of the
Oh yeah.
company,
Okay.
and they come in out of left field and whatever. So that's what's different is dysfunction, nepotism, favoritism, all these other things that just simply don't belong in a business.
Okay.
So that comes with a lot of challenges there, and that's I think the main distinction. And the other thing too is like emotions. There's just way more emotions involved. You can't
Mm,
fire family. So,
yeah.
how does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah.
If someone's not performing, do they just
Is
get
it?
to
It's
ride the
even more
coattails of
risky. It
everyone else?
seems like.
It's
You
way
know.
more risky. It's way more
Yeah.
unstable, and way more emotional. And business
Yeah.
and emotions sometimes don't mix.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just wanted
So
to.
this is the biggest piece that you would like take on that like that is the biggest differentiator from like other businesses and family businesses, right? Like when it comes to like the relationships probably and
Yeah,
like
yeah, for
yeah.
sure. I mean, the relationships just make it way harder to be objective about how you
Okay.
run the
Makes
business
sense.
because you're entertaining everyone's opinion, and that's not how a business can be ran. So,
Yeah.
I've done as much as I can to try to help my family, but now working with a lot of other entrepreneurs, a lot of other business owners,
Yep.
some of which have family in their business. It's really cool to have like that kind of background and that insight into, all right, what do we need to watch out for here? What needs to shift in the way that you run the business? How can we upgrade your SOPs
Yeah.
and input and like kind of put specific KPIs into the business that are undeniable, objective, emotionless. Hey, if cousin Joe doesn't meet this or this criteria, they're going to be put on a performance plan or something like
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
has to be very intentional.
Yeah.
But anyway, like that, my core competency though is way more so in the side of identity psychology, performance psychology, organizational psychology. That's kind of where the B2B stuff folds in with the organizational stuff. But what I really love is just on the individual and group level, what makes people, perform at a higher level, what drives people,
Mm.
and so that's where I focus. But yeah, I know we went on a tangent with the whole family
No,
business
all good,
thing.
all good. I love it.
That's just
Yeah.
one small part of my background, but um,
But this is
yeah,
cool, because if you think about it, if you wouldn't have this background, you wouldn't be able to actually help like people who are dealing with something similar, because you have the background. I don't, and you can literally see that I have no clue what you're talking about, like when it comes to like what are the relationships, how it actually matters so hard and so on. Like I think like you take it from the perspective that it's actually benefiting you and you are able to serve people on a higher level, which is pretty cool. I love it,
yeah.
you know.
One thing, as we go further into, the other work I'm up to, and I want to get into all the topics that you have planned out for today, when it comes to family business as well, uh, escaping or stepping away from a family business is way more emotionally loaded. Um,
Oh,
so
yeah,
to share that point, like for
I can
me,
imagine. Yeah.
I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania,
Uh-huh.
Northeast. I've been living in Miami, Florida now for about on my third year here, and the decision to step away from my family, not just the business, but like my family in that way was extremely emotional, full of guilt, and always questioning, all right, was this the right choice? And there's a part of it that kind of keeps me a little bit held on to that. Like there's still ways where I try to help and am involved, and it's really hard. But alongside that, even while I was living at home, I had four other jobs aside from my volunteer job working in the family business. I didn't get paid. I got paid with like a hoagie or pizza at lunch every day. That was my form of payment, like literally. And so doing that just because it's my family and working for free there. I'd also just gotten out of college at the time where I really started to uh, be involved in the business more so, and I had started a basketball training business. Was doing that, in between breaks. I would drive out to the community center, drive back, like train a client here or there, string them together. Also, had picked up a retail sales job,
Mm,
which in a large way, especially when I'm working now with like high
yeah.
ticket sales reps and other sales professionals, was actually a really great 5 years of experience in sales. On top of that, managing about 4 acres of residential and commercial real estate investments, and a lot of that was physical labor, tearing apart row homes, and laying floors, and all the fun stuff, scraping sewage off of the floor of a few of our properties after we got hit with a flood. So I was doing about five things at once, and at that time I felt like, all right, all this activity, all this motion means like I'm so productive, I'm achieving so much, but like you're really just like putting drops into different buckets. And
Mm,
so, me moving away was a way to focus strictly on my coaching. I didn't even
mm,
mention across those jobs, like tangential to my basketball training, which everyone came to me because of the performance psychology background, the sports psychology side of things,
mhm.
that had naturally grown into working with parents of the players who owned businesses or lawyers or
Right.
realtors or all these other people. And so I knew at a certain point, like I just needed to put the full attention into that because my purpose is impact, and I can only help my family so much, but I can certainly help others. And so, ever since moving down here, that's been my full focus, is just my coaching business and helping entrepreneurs and high achievers, high autonomy professionals really understand their own constraints, see a different perspective, implement my systems and whatnot to upgrade their internal systems and operate at a different level. So, uh, you know, that's kind of the sweet spot there, is like, let me focus on the individual, maybe how the individual impacts the team and how teams impact one another, and focus on that. So here we are.
So have you, because like again, heavily relate to moving away from my parents and like all the environment, family environment there. After school, I haven't mentioned that with you, but after I finished school and I saw that the path basically leads back to the same, destination as my parents. Which were they be basically employees and so on. Like I'm working 3 jobs to just literally pay everything. I moved to England on my own in my 21 years old. And I couldn't speak English at that time. I didn't know anything basically. I just thought that a different country is going to bring me a new, like the dream life, basically. But yeah, that was a really tough time when I just moved away. The relationship with my parents and with like that was really like it the distance actually helped the relationship. I don't know about you, like how you experienced it, but like literally the distance helped because they started value my time more and like appreciate me more
Yeah.
because yeah,
Yeah, you always want what you don't have, right? So,
yeah,
you take for granted, especially for me, I remember vividly as much as I loved knowing that I was helping my father and, my family, there were a lot of vivid times leading up to the breaking point of I need to
yeah,
get out of here.
yeah,
There were a lot of times where like I just felt like my time wasn't being valued. I was spending a lot of time on very low. I knew I shouldn't be scooping sewage off of a basement floor when my time was like just a simple function of can I replace this task and hire someone for a fraction of what my time is worth. Okay, then that's a
yeah,
no-brainer. My family didn't grow up with that mindset. We grew up in a surplus business. Hold on to everything, squeeze every little bit of value out of everything. And so that idea of like spending money on something that we could do ourselves and like that whole concept as well, that was so foreign.
hmm,
And yeah, like I just knew that being there, I was taken for granted. Like,
yeah,
and I felt in a way I was doing them a disservice to be able to have me around to do stuff for free. Like that's not the way the world works.
yeah,
That doesn't
yeah,
make much sense. I have to live my life. And so there's a lot of ways where, I'm sure a lot of other people feel that in some ways, shape, or form, like whether you're a caretaker for a parent or like whatever else, it's like you're doing your duties, but at some point, when are you actually doing a disservice to someone by just being too conveniently around? And so now that I'm away, there's a lot like when I come home and we have an action plan and there's something to get done in the business, needle moves a little bit more. And I just am a degree removed now to where I have like a bit more of an objective picture, bird's eye view of everything. I'm not in it. Like a fish can't see that it's inside
yeah,
of a fishbowl, right? So now I can kind of look at it and say, all right, here's what's going on. Here's what this brother's doing, my dad's doing this, and like here's what should be happening, and so yeah, you always want what you don't have, and I think by giving that space, that breathing room, you're able to come in with a little bit more impact. At least that's what I've experienced. But even in a family dynamic, right? Coming home and trying to get your parent to go to the gym more or whatever, um, and eat healthier, whatever the case is, it's like if all they're hearing all day is like blah 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 blah, it's like that voice goes goes flat at some point. So yeah, the space helps. I mean, I think that applies to every area of life,
yeah,
friendship,
yeah. Like
relationship, whatever.
the environment how influential was the environment for you, like when you step out from there, like
Yeah.
have you felt completely like different when it comes to like now I can be myself, actually, that I am now basically the
Yeah.
person that how I'm gonna lead my day, everything what I do and all of that, like yeah,
Yeah. A few threads to pull on there. What comes to mind, and actually, I just spent a good bit of time in April back home, back and forth, some stuff for the family business, and then it was actually my grandmother's 85th, so I spent some time there. And one thing, I came back and I made a YouTube video about it because it's something I feel every single time. I go back home and it's like all of these old associations and feelings and emotions and stimulus, like it all floods back in. And what came to mind there when you just said that is just like we're association machines. We're meant to hold on to certain meanings and senses and I think when you go back into an old environment, there's parts of you that your brain is holding on to that kind of flood back into the picture. So every time I go home, it's like I feel like I'm a different person. Like my world here kind of
Yeah.
pauses and I'm pulled right back into the dynamic of things and um, my childhood home when I'm in my bedroom at home. And yeah, it's like it's really interesting. And so I think that a lot of people need to be more aware of those things that they're so used to because right before I guess maybe right before we hit record, you were talking about a little bit of your background, your experiences. If we want to throw in the word trauma or any sort of past experiences that hold on to us, like I went through a lot in those 24, 25. I lived at home until I was 24, 25. I went through a lot in that environment, and so we don't realize what we hold on to, and a lot of people, I believe, tend to internalize uh, trauma or experiences and end up choosing to ascribe a certain meaning to it that isn't actually conducive to where they're trying to go. But because they're stuck in that old environment, they really don't have the objectivity to step aside and be like, wait a minute, I'm saying that this trauma means this, which is leading to me, you know, doing this and so on and so forth. And um, in the spirit of psychology or specifically Adlerian psychology, we have the choice to ascribe certain meanings to our past experiences. And I think that's important to remember because now, whenever I go home and I feel a certain emotion come up tied to when I was excluded from my friend group in high school and feeling sorry for myself or whatever the case is, I get to choose what that feeling means. Does that mean that I diminish my own self-worth and just like you know, pity myself or whatever the case is in the present tense. No, I've taken that meaning to help me understand like why I went through what I went through, why it benefits me that I went through it, and be able to apply that to the way that I interact with others and in my business and in my personal life, which I kind of see them as intertwined. But um, yeah, you get to choose that meaning. So anytime that you go back into an old environment, I think it's important to take note of like what feelings or emotions come up that don't actually apply to your new identity.
How did that transformation actually came up to you? Like, because to observing things this way.
Yeah. So, like I said, I spent, I spent basically, I would say where that really started was somewhere around the end of middle school, early high school,
Right.
where the friend group that I grew up with since literally
Uh-huh.
since birth had evolved and everyone matures and you
Yeah.
get into high school and you start getting into all these other things. I was a bit of a in a lot of ways I was an early bloomer. I was a bit of a uh, troublemaker in middle school.
Okay.
Stealing the Mike's Hard Lemonade from my parents' fridge in the basement, and got in with like a specific crowd in middle school that I could have gone way down a different path than I did. But I got it out of my system. I was the one in like elementary school, kindergarten, pre-K, kissing girls and whatever. And you would see my high school experience and be like, how is that possible? Because come high school, people start dabbling with, weed and drinking and all these things.
Yeah.
I am a, very strong person of principle and conviction. And I, went into that saying like, I'm never going to smoke. I'm never going to drink. I don't party. That's not my thing. And I didn't, and I never did. And that alongside just being a very, I guess, mature person at the time, like mentally, philosophically, whatever you want to call it, intellectually, I challenged people a lot. Even just
Yeah.
for the mere, intellectual stimulus or the Socratic
Yeah.
debate style, like just for that interest, I would challenge a lot of people, be a little
Have
bit
you found
argumentative, be a little
have you
stubborn.
found have you found that people aren't used to be challenged.
Yeah, people definitely don't like to be challenged, but especially in high school when nobody's mature enough to have a conversation. Long story short, me not wanting to party or do this or that, it led to me being excluded from the majority of my
I
my
feel
friends
you, bro. I
gatherings and
feel you. Yeah.
yeah. And
I'm
so
really like I'm very very similar into that because like I'm not drinking. I don't. I like I did until my until the time that I moved to England. I'm not partying. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking. I just like literally my whole life is business, gym,
yeah,
and my girlfriend.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. So like that was literally it. Like in high school, I never had a drink. I never, did any of that stuff. And being even when I was included into things and I was invited to some places, I still felt like I was just like kind of the observer in the corner. I didn't really feel like anyone really wanted me to be there. I didn't really feel like I belonged.
I
And
know.
through
Yeah.
that process,
Yeah.
a few things happened. I became way more observant of how one person responded to one thing and just experiencing people interact and what makes them tick and whatnot. So that lens of the observer just continued to grow. And
Yeah.
I always, I loved trying to analyze every behavior and read people differently and whatnot. But at the same time, I started to lose a bit of self-worth, a lot of self-confidence that decayed, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that that is a very shared experience across,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially across America and now with social media and all these other things. Like, I think a lot of ways people are feeling more and more lonely and lacking more and more confidence. Uh,
Mhm.
but in any case, yeah, that's definitely
Because we
something to
care
solve.
so much, right, about
Yeah.
other people's opinions,
Yeah,
right?
we do.
Like
We
we,
do. Yeah. Again, as a high school kid, it's hard not to get in your head and feel, we're social
yeah,
creatures. We want to feel accepted and all these other things. And so, that construct played out all the way through college.
yeah.
Just me doubting myself and questioning this or, uh, you
What is
know,
your overall opinion about school? Like the college system and all of that. Basically, they don't teach us about money. They don't teach us literally about like how to make money.
sure.
Like literally none of it.
Yeah, there's a significant gap in the education system when it comes to what it really means to not only make but preserve your wealth. That's not really taught. I mean, I was lucky. I had a good personal finance class in high school, and that was really the extent of it. But yeah, even in college, it doesn't really get touched on. Even just the fundamentals of like investing and
Yeah, yeah.
whatever don't really get spoken about. But as far as college overall, are you asking like what my thoughts are on if people should go to college?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, can
I mean,
be. Yeah,
yeah,
you can
I
go that
think
way.
anyone that says anyone that throws out a blanket statement of it's not worth it or it is just it's silly to say that there could be a one size fits all answer. I think in today's landscape, and I still battle with this because you'll notice I don't have a master's. I don't have a PhD or a PsyD in psychology. Um, I went the route of experiential learning, and
I think it's the best anyway.
yeah, and I do agree. I do believe it's the best, and I'm very confident in my ability and my knowledge in this field because of the impact that been able to have on my clients versus in a research paper. But uh, but I
Yeah.
still find myself like, do I go back? Do I get the master's? Do I do the PhD or PsyD? Like, do I go
Oh,
through
why?
that?
Why? Why would you think about it?
For me, it's just like I'm a life learner, I guess the way if you want to put it that way. Like, I know I
I mean,
can learn
yeah,
it anywhere else, but then the question is, all right, well, people value that, especially in like the corporate world. I think there's like some barriers to entry with some of it.
yeah.
I think that landscape's still shifting, but
Would you would you ever go that route?
would I over what?
If you would ever go that round, like I mean, like if you would go that way, like going to corporate or so. I don't like I don't, like I cannot feel it from you because like
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you do probably works very well. You know what you are doing. I don't think that would be a smart idea to go to actually like working for corporate or something like that, doing something that you do just being
Yeah.
employed. I think
No, no, no.
you
Only
are, yeah,
Yeah, only in the sense of like being an outside consultant. Like if a company saw
Mm,
what I did and they felt like I come in and help their organization. And, I'll
yeah.
run like a group flow workshops and come in and help only from that standpoint, like who they're bringing into the office and who they would hire if they vet out any sort of, experience in that way, as far as if I'm
Yeah.
an accredited
Bro,
psychologist. But
do you think that they would care about any freaking papers, PhD, whatever, uh, if they would be wanting to hire a, for example, I don't know, Tony Robinson or Dina Graciosi or somebody like that?
no,
I
yeah,
don't
absolutely
think they
not.
even would
At the
look
end of
at
the
it.
day, no, at the end of the day, I totally agree. At the end of the day, people want transformation, they want results, and
Yeah.
and so I actually, a lot of times I like that I'm not a licensed therapist or a psychologist because I don't have the constraints that they might have. I can really do whatever I want. I can do what I know works, versus having to work within the confines of, um, what you're required
Yeah.
to do,
Yeah.
like HIPAA and all those other things. Um, so
In my thoughts, I would literally like with your stuff, what you do and so on, like build a brand, bro. Like build a
yeah,
brand and you're gonna crush it. Like people when you start building, like when people know about you more and more and they see those transformations, they gonna
100%.
literally kiss your ass. Just telling you right
Yeah.
now.
No, I
Like
totally agree.
literally.
That's the sole focus now. But around the question of like, should someone go to
Yeah.
college? Should they not? I think it all depends. It all depends. Like, and where I've kind of brought that to was if I saw a clear return in going and getting a master's or whatever, or for me, honestly, like I know there's some path down the road, and I could become an adjunct teacher or something if I wanted to, probably as I am, but somewhere down the road, if I did want to be a professor and have that ability, I'd have to have some certain academic accreditations. So that would be probably the main purpose, is to be able to fill my cup in that way and go and
Yeah.
teach others at some, like somewhere down the road after, probably my 60s or something. um, but yeah, I definitly don't think I
How
need it.
old are you, bro? How old
I'm
are you? I'm
20.
just
Oh no, I'm 29. I had to think about that. I almost said 28. I turned 29 in February. Yeah, I'm 29. So I'm happy where I am. I know that I don't need the degrees. I'm just that type of person where it's like, oh, if I could go and get this, like, I have my drone license, I have my this license and that, all these
Yeah.
all these other side hustles or hobbies or whatever. So it's just kind of one of those things. But right now, in what I will say, in the landscape of today's world, when it comes to the idea of, money and what it can do for you and all these things, for a PsyD, for example, that's a probably like $250,000 program over the course of 3 to 5 years or whatever it is. What could I do with $250,000?
Mm,
Versus going and investing in that degree. That's where it becomes uh, a challenge to think about. It's like, all right, if I had the choice, if I had the $250,000 to pay for a PsyD versus invest in my personal brand, in my business,
mhm.
hire an assistant, like whatever it is, a content manager or whatever. Like there's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much that I could do with a $250,000, and I know that my return on that would be greater over the next 5 to 10 years than it would be from the PsyD. So
Got you.
that's a scenario where, like,
Yeah.
for me, I don't think it makes sense for a lot of people nowadays, just because of the cost of most educations. And now with AI, like, you can learn a lot through
Holy
that, and you can
smokes.
do a lot. You can make money in different ways. And so I think, if there's very specific paths that require degrees, then of course you go to college. Or
Mm,
on the flip side of it, if you have no idea what you want to do and no idea what your interests are and you feel a little lost, I would argue there's a lot of ways in which college does make sense for that person to be
yeah.
immersed in that educational environment, be around a bunch of different people, and kind of find what classes they like or this and that. I think that could be a use case. Maybe go to a community college or something, and not like you know a a super expensive state school or whatever you
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, I
No, no,
think
yeah,
I
cool.
think everyone's figuring that same question out. Um, but
No,
yeah, I
yeah.
don't even
No,
know how
no.
we
You
got
good.
there.
You good, bro.
Yeah.
That's yeah, 100%. Like school is overall like it's there is a huge gap. Um and like from interviewing like over now close to 200 people, like everybody agrees on on that, and that there is like it's basically being designed for to produce workers and in that industrial age, right? Basically soldiers. So it's literally from there it didn't change, and
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about, like, because how everything is moving so fast and and shifting, especially with AI right now. Like people are still learning stuff like how to do manual PowerPoint presentation, bro. Like,
Sure.
are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Right? This is insane,
Yeah.
right?
What I will say, just because we're on the topic of education and whatnot, I think that trades, technical schools, trade schools, those are going to become the new standard.
Mm.
Those are going to start to blow up, plumbing, electricians, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Specifically, plumbing and electricity, construction, of course, and whatever else. But with AI and data centers, like people think electricity first, but data centers have millions of gallons of water that flow through their cooling systems every day, and plumbing is important, but then also like data engineers, data like electrical engineers, all those sorts of not data engineers but electrical engineers, those sorts of trades that are going to become more and more prevalent. I think that's a really interesting area to start learning, because those are really experiential, tangible skills that you need to
Yep.
learn, versus a lot of the other stuff can be learned online. But to immerse yourself in like a trade school or something like that, I think for most young people now, it's going to be that, or they're going to go to some sort of online education platform, university, to learn AI prompting engineering and stuff like that. Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really
I
what,
see that too. Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm also like, let's a little bit go back to actually like your passion, because like we haven't been really talking about your passion when it which is literally coaching and so on. Like,
yeah,
I would be like, I'm super curious, like how did that become a passion? Where was the stepping stone for you? Like,
sure.
because and you said that you basically coach variety of different people, and also like even parents, and you are coaching in the industry of like sports, or do you do also like people when it comes to like business owners and so on?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of glossed over that. Sometimes I have trouble talking about myself. So my background is overall, it's in performance and organizational psychology. Where I really got the bug, like I mentioned, for psychology was early on in middle school. I talked about this probably in other podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, but one of my uncles is a licensed social worker and psychologist, and or more so a licensed social worker, but in the world of psychology, a therapist. And I'd always been inspired by that. And then due to my high school experiences and whatnot, and just kind of seeing other people, how they interact, like even to the desperate degree of like being so introspective to the point of like torture, I, would
Mhm.
always self-monitor every
Yeah.
single thing that I said, or thought or did, over-analyze, over-intellectualize, all those other things.
Mhm.
And that's still a part of me to this day in some ways, but gives me that level of closeness to where I help people now. But I was a part of a really great high school basketball program and had a passion for that. And I had one teammate who came from, the inner city, and him and I became close. And funny enough, just a few weeks ago, he reached out to me, and I said the same thing, and his eyes lit up like, "Holy shit, I remember that," which gave me so much,
Energy, or
validation and
yeah, validation
whatever.
energy. Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
felt so great. It was a really cool full circle moment. But I'll explain it here now, knowing for certain that it actually did do something. um, he came from an inner city school where it's a lot of me, me, me. If you're familiar with basketball, it's a lot of like ISO one on one. Like, let me show the
Yep.
recruiters what I got. Let me get out of the hood, provide for my family. Like,
Okay.
that's the mindset. And so it's very selfish. It's very points
Yeah.
oriented. How many can I score every game?
Yep.
He
Yeah.
comes to a suburban school where we're at, very reputable, um, high school, one of the best in the state. And you have to work a little differently. You got to work within the team. You got to trust the process. You got to show up. You got to,
Mm.
help your teammates and all these other things. Long story short, we're having a conversation and I break his ego down a little bit, and like him and I sitting on the couch playing 2K, and this was like week after week before practices, just having conversations. But there was one vivid moment where I'm having this conversation with him. We're going into the state playoffs, and I tell him, I say, "Yeah, like X, like everyone knows you could score 25, 30 a game. Like we know this. What are you trying? Like you have nothing to prove. Like no one even cares. Almost like kill his ego for a second.
Mm.
But shit, what if you got a triple double? What would it look like to go and get a triple double, to be assisting the team, like get assists, get rebounds, put your body on the line, be selfless, all these other things. So long story short, that clicks. Day or two later in practice, coach goes, "Hey, tell the team what you just told me." He says, "Yeah, coach, I'm gonna go get a triple double this next game, or I'm gonna like that's my new goal." And I'm sitting there like, wow, that really did change the way that he was started thinking about things. And I come to find out literally within the past month that from that point forward, even after I left, he was a year below me. That was his new thing. That was the new focus. And with him and the coach, that was their discussions like, X, you're a triple double guy now. Like, this is what you got to do: get assists, be a true point guard. He was just kind of a scoring point guard. Now he's like a true point guard, facilitator. Long story short, or I guess I said that 3 times now. So long story long, he goes on 3 different Division I schools, overseas guy, had a great basketball career. But that was like the spark that started it all. Like, I know that I can help people. From there, I had the chance to go on to the University of Pittsburgh, became an undergraduate assistant for, a Division I ACC top level school, and went through 3 different coaching staffs while I was there. And I was studying psychology and sociology and leadership development. Those were my degrees and certificates by the time I left. So I had the experience of working with a lot of different leadership teams, a lot of leadership styles, a lot of different egos in the players on the team, and what drives them. How can I help them become better and think about things in a different way, or whatever the case was. So that was all very experimental alongside my education there. That was still very sports oriented. Then I came out of college. I started a basketball training business back in Philadelphia, grew that, worked with kids all the way through college and overseas. And as I was growing that, I was involved, as we've now discussed already, in the family business. I was then involved in my part-time job that I had gotten. I was very self-conscious even in college. I didn't really, didn't talk to any girls, hadn't had any relationships or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt very lonely. Coming out of college,
Mm.
2019, I was in Australia for about a month and change, came back, started to find my ground, and then COVID. And but right before COVID hit, I had decided to go get a retail job at Lululemon, because my thought process was, what is the one thing that feels the most uncomfortable to me right now? Well, it's probably getting out there and talking to people,
Sales.
let alone girls or whatever.
Yeah.
I go work at Lululemon, not like I'm this creep, but like I like the products and whatever. And I knew that I would just be exposed in a retail environment to have conversations and find myself socially again. So I did that. That lasted part time for 5 years, said and done. But throughout all that, I was also building a real estate portfolio and managing rental properties, and doing manual labor and all these things, some of which were associated with the family business and everything in between. And that, like, I was obviously more involved in business and entrepreneurship, and just as I was building my training business and then my property business and doing the drone, I mentioned the drone license. I was doing like drone videography and stuff for
Yeah. Yeah.
for building for real estate, but also like events and stuff like that. So I was just involved in business, and I became a little bit more and more removed from basketball, aside from my clients that I was training. And so ultimately it got to the point, COVID allowed the opportunity for me to coach a lot of my players online when they went back to school, or if we couldn't get in the gym. A lot of, mental performance, so sports psychology coaching, just talking through their experiences off the court, on the court, like breaking that down. And yeah, long story short, I ended up uh, working with a few parents of the athletes that I was with, and then going and finding other leads, other business professionals, and sharing my background and how I could help, and started working with a lot more business owners and professionals, and even college students transitioning out of
Yeah.
college into the professional world. And So it became way less about basketball. And that's now probably 6 years ago. Um, but for the past, let's say 3 to 5 years, 4 or 5 years, I've been working with almost no basketball clients, except for if someone nearby makes it worth my while to go and train someone, then I love to, train a kid here and there. But the main focus is I work now with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and other, high performing professionals, high autonomy professionals. That could be realtors, health insurance, life insurance professionals, high ticket sales reps specifically as
Yeah.
well. I work with a lot of them to help them focus in on their internal systems and how they operate, and apply some of that sports psychology, but also some of the, mindset identity work into how they can upgrade those internal systems and perform at a higher level and start matching their potential, matching their output with their potential. So that's what it's all about now. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
definitely
Have you found similarities in between sports and business?
100%. I mean, that's why the transition was so seamless. Every
Yeah.
business owner wants to be LeBron. Every NBA athlete, any athlete is now getting into private equity and investing and business like franchises, whatever else. Like everyone wants to be, again, we want what we don't have. Every athlete wants to be a business owner. Every business owner admires every athlete. The reason why is the mindset that's required to become a great athlete is very similar to what it means to become a great business owner, an entrepreneur, especially an entrepreneur when you have that level of autonomy that you need to control and be able to architect your time and your energy and your inputs uh, to do the things consistently that will get you to where you want to be and where you are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a huge overlap. Um, yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really cool, bro. Like, I'm 100% with you on that because like sports and business is pretty much the same. The mindset is very very similar,
Yeah,
and people like I can see that lots of people are very talented, but they are not willing to do enough to actually, literally break through
yeah,
the ceiling.
yep.
And most of them would be way more successful if they would just do more what they do. What
Mm.
is actually like already working. But anyway, yeah, this is pretty cool. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Like, thank you for sharing all the stories, everything what you went through, and um, I have a question when it comes to your future, when it comes to like personal life and also like business wise, where are you going towards? Like what is the goal for you overall?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, and on one hand, I'd like to say that I have a clear goal. But
Hmm.
on the other hand, I'd also say that to pretend as if there's this mountaintop that someday I'm going to get to and be like, oh wow, I've made it. I don't really know if that exists. And when we talk,
Hmm.
and just to kind of come back, the idea of what it means to be like brainwashed to be broke. We all feel like we don't have enough. We all feel
Hmm.
like in some ways maybe we're broke, or and maybe that could be financially, maybe that could be relationally, emotionally, cognitively, like whatever it is. I don't know that there is a mountaintop, and I think that that's like an important thing to note, because where that takes you is to a little bit more of like an outcome driven mindset instead of
Yeah.
process driven. I'm sure other people have used those phrases. Same with like what it means to be a great athlete and be a great business owner. You got to get in the gym every day. You got to put in the reps
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
any championship trophy in sight. Um, for me, it's mostly a function of, can I achieve the goals that I set out, and really, can I live by the values and the roles that I ascribe meaning to, and meet each of those. So to give you an idea of how I look at things, and every single client that works with me, they go through this first module. It's called the Clarity Stack. It's a 3-layer, basically, tech stack for performance. And the first layer is your iOS, your internal operating system. And the first module, the first node in that layer is your performance identity. And I spend, maybe I over index on the time spent on that specific node, because it's the identity that we carry every day and how we perform. And so for me, rather than thinking about, and I do think about it, by the way, and I'm not going to claim that I don't, and I don't have all these dreams and ambitions, but like I drive myself crazy in that. So I try to be conscious, and rather than thinking about what's that mountaintop, what are my values? Who am I today? What are
Mm-hmm.
my roles that I embody in the different domains of my life? What are the values, the operating values that I uphold throughout each of these domains? And throughout those, what are the daily, weekly, monthly actions that I know that I need to consistently perform in order to realize or self actualize that ideal version of myself? Um, so, the topic of self actualization probably could be a whole different conversation, but that's where I focus is like, what's my performance identity? And I think everyone needs to start with identity in the now versus where they want to be. If you want to spend 30 minutes on YouTube, I put out this long video a while back. And I think this idea of being versus becoming is really important. A lot of people spend so much time future, future pacing
Mm-hmm.
their reality. And, as we all know, depression lives in the past, anxiety lives in the future, right? So
Yeah.
it just leads to so much anxiety of like unknowingness. We don't have any patterns to hold on to. Our brain wants associations. We want predictability. We want patterns. So if you can create those patterns for yourself within your identity and reaffirm who you are today in the now, as human beings, we can't exist in the past or future. We exist today. So we need to focus on our inputs today. And that's where I try to remind and I'm saying this right now as like a reminder to myself as well, like what are the things that align with who I am and what I value today? And how can I
Mm-hmm.
execute on those specific things? And then of course, when it comes to productivity and mapping out your priorities, your SOPs, so to speak, for working through different domains of your career, your life, whatever, like you got to meet those and have ways to track them. Uh, and so prioritizing your schedule, or more particularly scheduling around your energy, cognitively, emotionally, physically, um, I think that's the better focus. So that's a long-winded way of saying yes. Ideally, could I say, all right, yep, $30 million. As soon as I have that in total net worth, and those are all in secure investment portfolios producing at least $250,000 of passive returns every single year that I could live off of and continue to invest in whatever it is, like however the math works out. Yeah, sure, I can say I have that number, but then the question is, you still have to go back to the stepping stones of what could get you there. So I
Yeah.
would say, it's important to use it as like a goalpost, but as soon as that goalpost is set, it's forgotten. It's only set for the purpose of reverse engineering the steps to get there. But those have to live in the present moment, because I want to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
or I want to not be broke, or I want to be rich. Like those are all wants that live in the future. So the question is, what would that version of you do today? And if you were to start living in accordance with that identity, would you be further along than you are now? So performance identity, that's where I start with every single client. And I think that that's where it's most worthwhile to start for anyone, is thinking about that. And yeah, and there's a few ways that I measure the different domains or dimensions of performance, and I think it's important to understand how you're operating across those five dimensions, um, and then you know plan out the work from there. So
Yeah, yeah. Always, 100% agree with you on that, because like you always have to know your current situation, and then then you can plan the goal. Because if you don't know where you are, you cannot move forward. You cannot do changes about
yeah,
your current, like your life and how the life should look
for
like,
sure.
and
It's
you
knowing
know,
where you are, but also knowing who you are. What's the
and
version
who you
like?
are, 100%.
We
Yeah.
have the id, ego, superego. We have our uh, perceived self, our real self, ideal self.
Yeah.
So who is it that you tell yourself that you are? What does this self-talk look like? If how would you imagine someone else would describe you, how you describe yourself, and like what are those parts of you that
And
aren't
that's
you're not
and
fully clear on?
yeah.
Yeah.
This is pretty tough question actually to
Yeah.
even ask. Like, ask like everybody who's listening, ask the question who you are, who you truly are. This
Yeah.
is really, really tough question to actually answer, because
The
like you
yeah.
probably know all of those people, all of those influencers, who they are.
Sure.
but you have probably never asked actually yourself who you are and how people sees you or how you see yourself even, right?
Yeah.
Because like that's more important than anything else, I would say, like how you see yourself.
Sure.
And like if you believe in God, how
Yeah.
God sees you, right? But behold, he already told you, my
Yeah, you
opinion.
can yeah, depending, like you can look into like the higher power and what that means to you, but I'll rephrase for anyone listening. I'll rephrase your question in a few
Okay,
different brackets because I think
okay.
it's really fascinating to think through it. The first question is, what would others say? What do you believe others would say about you? How would they describe you? You know, others that kind of know you enough. How would they describe you? All right, that's one question. Um, and then understanding, okay, how would you describe yourself? All
Hmm.
right, not like who am I as if it's like this fixed answer, but like how would you
Hmm.
describe yourself? Okay, great. How do you believe others would describe you? Okay, great. Uh,
Hmm.
the part of you that describes yourself is important to understand because those are usually going to be, well, a very heavy mix of very positives and very negatives, right? But
Yeah.
that perceived self, you know, the way that you believe other people would describe you, in a lot of ways, those are way more deeply rooted answers, um, because you're always wondering like how you're judged and whatnot. So I like to break it down in those two ways. I think that that's um, really fascinating way to think
Okay.
about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it.
Uh,
Yeah. And also like what I wanted to say when you said like that the goal is not actually a goal, it's like this type of fiction type of thing. I love the quote. I don't know who said it, if that was Myron Golden or somebody like that. Do you know Myron Golden? Have
yeah,
you
of
heard of
course.
that guy?
Yeah,
Okay. So he said that basically the goal is actually the destination. The journey is the destination.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
for sure.
Yeah.
The
I
journey's the
love that.
destination. I'll also read you a quote um, that I really like because this is my goal. This is my purpose,
Yeah.
um, which is, oh, where did it go? It's a quote by LP Jacks. A lot of times it gets misattributed to Chateaubriand, but it's from his book Education Through Recreation.
Uh-huh.
And the quote
Uh-huh.
goes, "A master in the art of living draws no sharp distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence through whatever he is doing, and leaves others to determine whether he is working or playing. To himself, he always appears to be doing both." So the idea there is like, I am who I am. Everything that I'm building, you know, coaching for me is recreation. Recreation is a part of like me help, like when I'm with others socially, I want to help them. When I'm
Yeah.
helping someone in a professional capacity, I see that as like something that fills me up in a way where I don't see a distinction there. And I think that for me, I guess you could call that the journey in and of itself, but just staying as close to that virtue as possible, I think is the entire journey and the entire destination for me. Like I'm already doing it. How can I continue to do it at a bigger scale, have more visibility, have more credibility and impact, and all those other things? That's what it's all about for me.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, brother. That was
For sure.
amazing. You know, I have like three rapid fire usually that I ask. So the first one would be like, is there a book that you would like recommend to everybody
Mm.
that should read?
Wow. I mean, that's such a broad one. It depends on what, I know you're the purpose of this podcast, like Brainwash to be broke, we didn't really get into personal finances and stuff like that. But just pulling on that string or like keeping that in mind, I think The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is like an undeniable, easy
Yeah, yeah,
recommendation.
yeah, yeah.
The other one of my favorites as far as like understanding how we think and how we make decisions, Thinking Fast and Slow by the late Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner. I think
Uh-huh.
he's a very inspirational, a source of inspiration for me as a psychologist and economist. And so yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel. Those are two great ones that
Love it.
hopefully stays a little bit on theme here. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah,
What
really
else you
cool.
got?
Yeah. Well, by the way, we can for sure do another episode with it. Like, I would love to have like another episode. Even like you're amazing, dude. I love to hanging out with you. You know what you're doing.
Yeah,
I love your energy, and we can for sure go to like the topics like about money and so on. That would be great, actually.
happy to
Um,
do it.
yeah. And so okay, so the second one would be, is there any advice on the internet that you completely like disagree with, like it's total BS and you just like hate that shit and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, this is a fucking fun one. This is a fun one. I'm gonna go to this because I hope it'll ruffle some feathers, but I would love, we'll have to go deeper on this, but I'll keep it really short so people can be like, "What are you talking about?" I'm a performance coach, and a lot of people in the self-help life coaching space, you probably wouldn't have heard this before, but a lot of people say that discipline, like discipline over motivation, discipline meets motivation. If you just are disciplined all the time, 24/7, you'll get to where you want to get to. Well, guess what? That's fucking not true because
Ooh. Okay.
motivation supersedes discipline. However, discipline is an important component to building intrinsic sustainable motivation.
Uh-huh.
When we think about what motivation means,
Yeah.
uh, it's simply just the motive to
Mm-hmm.
act.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that stimulus response that says, "Oh yeah, I should do this thing," or I anticipate wanting to do this thing. That's the way dopamine works. A lot of people think dopamine like gets triggered when you do something. It actually gets releases in anticipation of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So discipline is not better than motivation. Discipline creates motivation. And I think if we were to think about that in that construct, then the question would be, how can I tailor my actions in a way that I can implement discipline and consistency over time to create an intrinsic response, an intrinsic dopamine response, um, based on who I believe myself to be,
Mm-hmm.
to reinforce that behavior long term. And I have a video about my performance freedom engine of how we take a skill and build our competency over time through discipline to increase our self-confidence, our self-efficacy, which then develops into motivation. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with like, oh, follow your passion. Horrible advice. Follow what you're good at. Follow a skill that you
Yeah.
believe you can become better at. And through all of those different things, discipline, motivation, and the rest, you'll then find that passion for it because your increasing competency is very rewarding. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I guess that was two pieces of advice.
Oh,
Discipline
no, no,
is
yeah,
better
really
than
good because
motivation. Discipline creates motivation. Don't
yeah.
follow your passion. Follow your competencies.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when I think it was even Alex Hormozy who said something similar to that because like you start a business because of passion, like he started his gym business, but then you anyway ending up doing things that you hate
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like most of the
Funny.
time you're basically doing the things that you hate.
Yeah, for sure.
And like
Yeah.
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
would love, I would love to save the turtles, and I'm passionate about saving the turtle. But like, what you're gonna have to do to build a nonprofit to do this or this or this to just save one turtle from choking on a goddamn plastic straw? Like, give me a break. Um,
Yeah.
or whatever. I hate paper straws, by the way. Uh, so you know, give me plastic all day. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I think that just following what you believe yourself to be good at, or finding something that you really want to become good at, chasing that competency is better than anything else. And that's why business and sport like flow really well within one another. I think that building a skill is really valuable. And I think for anyone, even still, if you're in business, if you don't have a hobby, like a high flow activity such as a sport,
Mhm.
then you need to find one because that's really important to constantly be developing new skills. And if you start to
Yeah.
plateau in your business and you don't have that stimulus, that ability to kind of basically wire towards improved skill development, then you're
Mhm.
going to stay stuck. So if you can't find it in the business, you need to replace that stimulus somewhere else. You need to go and find something that you can develop a skill for. For me, it's chess, jump roping, basketball, paddle. Like those are my high flow activities. Um, but yeah, that's really important as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so you haven't found like something that is it based on passion? Like you find you're looking for passion to like invest your time into that, like literally like you learning new skills and developing yourself over
Yeah.
time. Is because like I'm the person of like the same way, right? I love like I'm literally all year like all life learning. I love learning and studying stuff and testing new things,
Yeah.
right? I'm in a sport also where like really lot and traveling. I'm looking for experiences and so on. Like I value freedom, right? And this type of thing. But for me, like I love sport, but business is still for me like one of the biggest driving sources that I have in my life, because like there is so much to learn
Yeah.
and so much skills to develop that I cannot like even think of different things. So like f- for I feel from you like that's because you probably grew up in the environment of like playing sports and so on, right? So the sport for you is like the core value of yours, right? It seems like that you are like completely passionate about sport and also like making money for sure and doing having impact and so on, right? But like if there would be a way that you can like literally do sport and like help people with sport and like turn that into a business, that would be the most fulfilling part of yours. I feel like from you. Is that correct?
As far as turning sports in, you mean taking the same skills that allow them to be good at sports and turning it into a business, or turning the sport itself? Like for me, I
Tell
started
me,
with
you tell
basketball.
me, you tell
Like
me.
my world was basketball, and so I came out
Uh-huh.
of school and I was like, all right, well, I want to start a business. What do I start? Okay, a basketball training business. But I
Okay.
knew that that wasn't really like, sure, I would love to help someone start a basketball training business, fine. But quite frankly, like I don't know that that wouldn't be my preference. I don't think.
Would you are you more passionate about business or are you more passionate about actual like sport and
For
so
me,
on?
business. For me, business, and
Really?
that's where
Okay.
I'm at. Yeah, that's
Okay.
why I'm at where I'm at now. Sport was a great part of my life growing up, and it's a part of it now. You know, recreationally, playing, playing basketball, paddle, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I go to the shooting range. That's another skill that I like to build and grow and all of that. But I should clarify the reason why I believe it's so important to have that. Like, of course, I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly improving my skills in sales and
No
AI
bashing that
and
for sure. Yeah.
prompting and building and all these other things. Like, I'm always improving skills there. However, when it comes to the idea of flow and being able to engage in deep immersive work, I'll get a little nerdy for a second. Flow
Oh, go.
requires a construct called transient hypofrontality, and that's when your
Uh-huh.
prefrontal cortex basically quiets down. A lot of
Yep.
the filtering, a lot of the self-talk, the internal dialogue that we have with ourselves to, convince ourselves to not do this and do that or all those things, that's just the prefrontal cortex filtering perceived threats and all these other things. With transient hypofrontality, your that part of your brain quiets down. Now, one of the clearest ways, and one of the, I guess, areas where this happens the most is sports.
Ooh,
Okay,
okay. I
because
didn't know that. Okay.
yeah, because when you think of flow psychology requires a
Yep.
few different things, mainly 5 to 7 things, but I'll name a couple of them. One of them is clear and immediate feedback. All right,
Uh-huh.
if you do something right, you see a positive feedback. If you do something wrong, you have clear immediate feedback. Right?
Yeah.
You miss a shot, it bounces off the rim and goes out of bounds. Or if
Mm-hmm.
if you make a shot, the stadium cheers. Like when you're
Yep.
doing something right or wrong. You have clear and
Yeah.
immediate feedback. That's not always the case in business.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is the ratio of challenge and competency, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Difficulty and competency. So it needs to be challenging enough to not be boring, but it can't be too challenging that it causes stress and overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're playing sports, you're probably playing, if you're actively playing sports regularly, you're probably good enough to where you can get in the reps and feel good about it. But it's not like
Mm-hmm.
you go on and step on the court and you're like trembling because you feel like there's a
Yep.
lion chasing after you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in business, it's like there's so much more unknowns. So
Mm-hmm.
so for that purpose, and those are only two of the preconditions for flow. There's many others, but I know we're to the end here. For that purpose, I believe sports or any sort of active like exercise, like for me, like I said, jumping rope. If I fuck up, the rope hits my toes. I don't like that. So I figure out a way to get back into it, right? I have that push and pull of knowing how to get back into it. If I'm at the shooting range, I'm off center, I dial in, I focus on my breath, I, rewire my system. And,
Hmm.
so, and you hear a lot of people talk about flow in the sense of like, Steph Curry being a lights out shooter. You just go
Okay.
blank and like time freezes and you're just
Yeah.
kind of performing. That's something that's so hard to find in business, or if I'm sitting in front of my desk trying to code. Like if I was
Ooh,
really
yeah.
good at coding or really good at AI prompting or whatever, then maybe I can get into a flow with that.
Yeah.
But that being said, sport is a really really valuable way to trigger flow, to activate transient hyperfrontality, to allow you to
Yeah.
engage into flow. So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's important. It's not to say that you can't improve skills anywhere else. It's that you can't replicate that as easily anywhere else. Okay, so
Yeah.
I have certain flow rituals that
Oh,
I'll
that's
that
so
I'll
good, actually.
yeah. So like I have certain flow rituals that I'll
Yeah.
help like someone get into before, like when you wake up first thing in the morning, your brain is coming out of delta from a deep sleep and now it's in the theta state. That's when you're most prone to flow. So that's like the
Yeah.
best time for you to get creative and do some deep work.
Uh-huh.
But you want to instill some sort of ritual that becomes predictable, so that your brain recognizes the pattern, knows that it's about to get into deep work, and you're ready to go. So you pop out of bed. Maybe you like, stretch for a second. For me, like I'll come down, I'll do some push-ups, I'll do like some twists or whatever it is to
Yep.
activate my body, just
Yeah.
to not feel as stiff. And that's my cue. Like, okay, now it's time to sit down and get into flow, or I'll do my standing desk. But so I do some rituals with people when they can't, consistently go out and
Do
play a
you think
sport. But
do you think it's good idea to start your day basically like because for example I'm waking up like at 6 in the morning or like between somewhere before 6 and I'm going to gym straight up for 1.5 hour usually and then I'm getting diving into work. Do you think it's good way to start or would you recommend something different?
yeah, this is where I like to just kind of probe a little bit. At the end of the day, like if you get up, you go to the gym, you feel really great about getting it done in the beginning of the day, and then you go and have super productive work blocks after that, and you have no concerns, don't change what you're doing. It's fine.
Okay.
However, and I think I just posted this yesterday or whatever. I can't keep track, but the basically, if I wanted to be brash about it, if you're waking up and going straight to the gym, you're effectively trading some of your most creative
That's what I'm yeah.
hours
Yeah.
for fucking dumbbells and a treadmill. Like
Mhm.
you'll have the energy physically, like you'll have the energy to go to the gym at 2 p.m., 3 p.m., or even 10 a.m., 11 a.m., or even not 8 or 9. If you wake up at 6, really the first 60 to 90 minutes is when you're going to be phasing out of that theta state. So you have about that first 60 to 90 minutes to get some really great work done. So for me, I'll give you an example. I don't use an alarm or anything like that. So based on daylight savings, right now I wake up around closer to 7. Usually if it's daylight savings or vice versa, can't keep track. I'll wake up at like 6 with the sun, and I'll get up, and my first stop is my desk. I don't touch my phone. I sit down. Uh, a lot of your associative thinking happens when you're in theta. So like filtering out my to-dos, thinking about anything creative that I want to write down. I'll get that down. I'll set my to-dos. Um, this is a perfect day. I'm not perfect, but this is what a perfect day would look like, and I try to hit it pretty consistently. I do that and I get into work. And then come around, like, so now, for example, come around 8:30. If it's not a heavy call day, around 8:30 is when I'll start to go to the gym, right? So I wake
Mhm.
up at 7. That gives me about 90 minutes to get some stuff done. And that's when I'll go to the gym. The other important part of that is like the gym is one of the most proven ways to recharge cognitively, because we
Mm.
all have what's called ultradian rhythms. After about every 90 minutes, we need a solid 20 to 30 minutes of rest. And after every 3 cycles of that, that trough, that need to recharge becomes deeper and deeper. We need more time to recharge. So I believe that for most people, it's more beneficial to work for 60 to 90 minutes and then go to the gym. But
Mhm.
again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you have no concerns, don't change anything. What I would say, if you're really curious about what I mentioned, like the test, I think a while back, the 5 dimensions of performance. Uh, I'd love anyone listening if you go to to my website or click, it's on my Instagram, it's on jessehoffman.com or clear.jessehoffman.com. I have a clear diagnostic. It's a diagnostic that I finally took the time to build out that measures 5 different domains of human performance, and cognitive clarity is the first one. But it's an acronym. Cognitive clarity is the first one. But then with what we're talking about, the E is energy architecture, and the R is recovery intelligence. So those are 2 key ones that fit with what we're talking about. The other one's leadership, identity, and action consistency. But if you go and take that test, you'll kind of get a score for where you're at, what domain is kind of leaking a bit. And just by patching that up, they all feed within one another. So just by patching up your energy architecture, the way that you schedule out your energy, you know, that I think is really important in a lot of ways and determines how you're able to perform across different other domains of your life or your workday. So yeah, go and take that diagnostic. I'd love to see your results, and from there you can choose to apply for a clarity call with me to go over the results. And that's the way that I like to just start conversations with people, just to see what they're really looking like and get tangible with what they're doing. Yeah, so I don't want to try to convince you to change up your gym routine, but if you're not feeling fully confident in your productivity, try that shift and see what happens.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
So the last question is, if this would be your last interview we've ever done, what would be the message that you would love to leave behind you?
Well, I guess go and take that test. That'd be a good one. But no, but more importantly, I I've gone through a lot of self-doubt, a lot of, lack of confidence, a lot of all these things. I think at the end of the day, we all probably feel like we're more capable or destined for more or have more potential than we're actually living up to in the current state. And a lot of that is because of what we choose to hold on to in the past and the stories and narratives that we tell ourselves, whether it's about money or whether it's about friendships or relationships. There's many forms of energy. Each of those are one of them. I would say do more work to clearly envision what that ideal version of yourself is, who they are. You could even go as far as what they drive, the car, the rooms of your house, the wall colors, and all those other visualization techniques, which can be very valuable. But fundamentally, think about who that ideal version of yourself is. What are the roles that you play in your life? The operating values. This is all part of the performance identity side of things. Like, who is that person? Identify that. That allows you to identify the gap, the difference between what you believe you're capable of doing and what you're currently doing. The only thing that is keeping you from being that person is your choice today, right here, right now, in the present, to take the actions that resemble the person that you envision yourself having the potential of being. That is the only difference. I have not gotten there, and my belief is that you will never fully actualize that ideal potential. But if you want to get as close to it as possible, do what I just said, live by it in the now, have some accountability partners, invest in yourself in certain ways. You need to invest your energy into what will hold you accountable to doing it. Like I mentioned, energy could be emotions, it could be time, it could be attention, it could be money. Any of those things are forms of energy. You need to invest them all accordingly to, pursue where you want to get to. I guess a shameless plug, I'm a coach. This is what I help people do for a living. If you want to invest your time, your attention, and your money into realizing your potential, go and invest in a coach. It doesn't have to be me, obviously. Like anyone. Like, invest your money into people that hold you accountable, that are more like who you want to be. Not become. The becoming never ends. You will always be iterating. You will always be improving. But who do you want to choose to be today? How can you surround yourself with people that are more like that? So I don't know if that was a coherent message. I tend to black out and ramble, but that would be my message.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here. And for everybody who's listening, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
All right. Appreciate it, Adam.